Discover the wonders of the wood element, unlocking creativity, passion, purpose, movement, cycles, things, emotions like frustration and anger, and motivation, and actually sources of motivation, purpose and drive. Probably said that already. These are all things to do with the wood element, like even your menstrual cycle if you're a female, and things to do with sleep, circadian rhythm. Many of these things have links to the wood element. Welcome to the Chinese Medicine Podcast. I'm Marie Hopkinson. I'm a herbalist and an acupuncturist. And in today's video, we're going to take a bit of a deep dive, tutorial style video. So this is a bit different to what I do on the channel in terms of this is a layer deeper than what I normally do. Now, why am I doing this? This is actually a promotional video that I'm doing, giving you for free what I would be doing in the course I'm offering, which is starting really soon. So we'll get into the video. And if you like this kind of thing and you think, oh yeah, I really like learning this way and I'm enjoying this, then this is going to be like, that'll let you know that the course is kind of going to be right for you. So I thought, what better way to show you that I will help you than actually to help you. So let's get into it. What is the wood element all about? Now, before we even get there, we have to understand that your body has 5 elements. So you might be completely new to the ideas of Chinese medicine. You think, oh, this is a bit weird. Like, what are these elements? Now, what they are is links to our physical body, our emotional self, and things like that, to the outside world, to the environment. And they're a way of Chinese medicine seeing seasons. They see all the seasons of the year through the 5 elements. They see the cycles that we cycle through as a human being, like from birth to death, through the 5 elements. The stages of life that you go through, we can see those things through the 5 elements. And we also link those elements to organs. And that's probably what you're mostly familiar with. If you've ever been to an acupuncturist and they've said, you've got liver qi stagnation, well, that's a wood element thing. So that's what we're going to talk about today. What do we even mean by that? It's one of the most common TCM diagnoses given. That's why I've chosen wood to use that as the first one that we'll talk about. So the elements links emotions, they link organs, they link seasons and all kinds of stuff to that. So we in my bigger course, we're going to probably, before we got to this part, we would have gone through, those things I just mentioned about the links to the seasons and the emotions and things in a lot more detail. So you'd kind of have even a deeper understanding, but we're kind of just sort of jumping into this concept. So, when I do this course, it's step by step, and you'll kind of be able to really, really understand in depth of each thing as we go. So let's assume we understand roughly what those 5 elements are representing, and then we kind of deep dive or use the example of wood to understand what they do. So, one of the first things we think of with the elements is seasons. We kind of want to build up a bit of a picture of what each of these things are. So I'm going to draw the circle of wood here, and we're going to draw it in green. So we kind of have an idea just like this. I'll kind of do a few circles like that. So we kind of understand wood by thinking about all these different aspects of its nature. And why do we draw wood in green? Why do we associate wood with green? Because wood, we often think of wood as in, this wooden cupboard here or this wooden shelf behind me. But that's actually dead wood. The green represents wood infused with the element before it, water. So that's wood that's infused with water, the growth, right? So wood represents the springtime, or the spring is the season relating to wood. And that's when you see wood shoots, right? These little shoots of, whatever's growing kind of coming out. Now, in Australia where I live, we don't really have like a deepest, darkest winter, certainly where it's all frosty and snowy and things like that. I mean, some places in Australia do, but not many. But in general, winter is like the season of potentially things can die, right? And they certainly go into hibernation. And you might have thought that it's died, but then when spring comes, the seed springs forth. And that's kind of the representation of wood, right? Is this springing forth, new is a good word to associate with wood, right? So new things, especially when we think about the emotional and mental health, not really emotional, but, these kinds of more esoteric aspects of Chinese medicine, those things we associate with wood. So spring is its season, and its energetics is of that sort of the seed budding, the sprout. Okay, so we think about sprout like this new growth, right? So things that have just very budding, very immature as well, right? Something springing forth. So the spring season is also a time of great change. Now, the two big seasons in Chinese medicine of change is spring and autumn. So these kinds of are transitional seasons, whereas the more stable seasons is summer and winter, right? So summer's the peak of yang and winter's the peak of yin. So the season of spring represents a transition. It's not like a stable necessarily a stable season. So we're going from yin to yang, right? So the yang has got, as in we're coming from a time of yin. So our yang is deeper and it's going out. It's on the move. It's moving outwardly. And this is often why springtime is associated with many illnesses for people, like the time where they get colds and flus, they get like allergies and asthma-y things and stuff like that. And you might think colds and flus, well, isn't that winter time? Well, some people only get sick in springtime. Like they don't get many colds and flus in winter, but they get sick. They get, almost flu-like symptoms, but it's like they would say, oh, it's allergies in springtime. And that is because of this movement of yang. Now, why would we bother to understand all this stuff? Well, if you want to be a practitioner of Chinese medicine, you spend a lot of time thinking about the physiology, which is how things function normally. And then pathology is why are they going wrong? Like what's happening when disease processes happen, so that we can help people, right? That's essentially what a practitioner does. When I'm teaching this course for people who want to learn it for themselves, it's so that you can understand enough to understand yourself when you get sick, or to understand yourself through the transitions of life, right? So, and to sort of think about, okay, how can I intervene? When should I intervene, with self-help things, and what self-help things should I use? But to really kind of understand that deep enough to recognize what you should use, you kind of have to have a bit more of a solid foundation of this, theory of Chinese medicine. So when we're thinking about the wood element, we really want to understand, like almost form a picture of what that is. So if you think about springtime, it's a good analogy of that wood, and that's kind of what it's doing in our body. Now, this might be a bit, for some people, they find this very easy to understand Chinese medicine like this, and for some people, it's like, it can be a bit of a stretch because it's a very metaphorical idea. But think about when you're coming from winter into spring. It's like a welcome warmness. It's a welcome change. Okay, you've been bundled up, you've been colder, and now you're like, oh, the weather it's not warm, but it's becoming warmer. And then as the weeks go on and springtime starts to, settle in, you get lovely, bigger, warmer days. Towards then it's becoming summer, when it, sort of reaches that, well, this is like really quite hot now. So, another aspect of the wood element is wind. Okay, I'm going to write this down here. This is essentially my little whiteboard, so I'm writing it down on my iPad and I'll stick it up on the board up here. So wind is movement, right? Now, wind in Chinese medicine, in the Neijing, like when they talk about wind, it's actually synonymous with wood. So this idea of movement being a necessary thing in the body, you need things to move. Well, the wood element's providing that movement. But we also can have abnormal movements or too much movement. So you can have a lack of movement, and then you can have too much movement. What's too much movement? Too much movement would be reckless movement, twitching and tremors, and people get restless legs or legs kicking, or involuntary movements, even things like, this kind of thing where you've got a Bell's palsy. In Chinese medicine, those things are due to wind, and wind can suddenly arise. Okay, and the sudden is part of the wood, suddenly arising. Right, so wind can suddenly arise, and wind can also be lovely, right? Wind can be gentle and peaceful in a way and cooling you down, and that's wind, so lovely. But if someone turns that fan on too high, oh my goodness, it's too much, and it's drying me, it's drying all my fluids out because of that wind. If you've ever been on a boat, you go at a certain speed, it's lovely, it's bearable, and then, someone decides, okay, we're going to ramp up this boat, and then you've got, this wind blowing on you, and, wind also carries other things. It carries, in Chinese medicine, carries other diseases, which is hence why they say in the Neijing that spring is the origin of these 100 diseases. Like, where do these diseases arise from? Well, the wind is carrying those things. Like, it's carrying the viruses, it's carrying the pathogens, it's carrying the pollen, the things that are causing us kind of seasonal allergies. So let's go back on that boat. We're going along, singing a song, having a good old time. And then the wind can carry the water, right? The wind can pick the water up and spray that water onto you, right? It's only because of the wind, like as in the movement of that boat's creating some wind, or a big breeze comes and it can really spray that water onto you. So it can combine with other pathogens very easily. Now, again, in this course that I'm doing, we will go through a whole week where we just talk about wind, water, as in wind, dampness, dryness, all the different pathogens in Chinese medicine. So we'll kind of have an in-depth understanding just into those things, in and of themselves. So the organs that Chinese medicine attributes to the wood element is the yin organ is the liver, and the yang organ is the gallbladder. I'll put this here. Yin organ and the yang organ is the gallbladder. A lot of these aspects that TCM sort of says are liver things are actually just wood things, because they are also gallbladder things as well. The way that Chinese medicine attributes the functions of lots of physical processes that are happening in our body is they attribute them to these elemental structures or these organ structures. And I tend to talk about the elements much more than the organs themselves, because it's less confusing. So when you say like liver, you've got liver damp heat, it's actually like often gallbladder damp heat as well, or it's a dysfunction of the wood element, and that then it's generating that damp heat, or it's generating that dampness. Or qi stagnation, for instance, is a common one, right? Liver qi stagnation. I've almost never met a person who hasn't said that their practitioner said they had that. Now, why is that? Because probably just society causes liver qi stagnation, and we'll kind of get to that because it's a big part of discussing the wood element, right? So let's get back to these organs. The liver organ is said to have an association with the eyes, and it also has an association with blood. So we're going to sort of link these things: eyes, blood. Okay. It has an association with cycles and regularity in our body, and that is really through through this nature of wind, right? So this nature of wind is kind of cycles. But we also see that through the relationship of blood, because the liver itself is said to store blood. So we're going to go through a whole bunch of Chinese medicine sayings, like attributes, how these organs are attributed. Now, this is basic TCM, like traditional Chinese medicine 101, foundations of Chinese medicine. And the main book that you're probably going to use for this, if you're studying Chinese medicine, is Giovanni Macciocci's Foundations of Chinese Medicine. So I'm kind of going to use those ideas and talk about that in my course to give you this kind of understanding of what these things do. But I'll explain it in my own way, and also attribute those things more to the elements, the way that I talk about them. So because, again, I think it just makes it easier and less confusing. Like the liver example is probably not as strong as the example of the water element and the kidney. Like if I tell a patient, when I did TCM back in the day, before I did classical Chinese medicine, I would often, a patient would say, you'd say, oh, you've got kidney yin deficiency, or you've got kidney deficiency. And they would automatically think, oh, is there something wrong with my kidneys? Like, do I have a kidney problem? Do I need to go to the doctors and get my kidneys tested? No, the answers to that is probably no. It could be, but in most cases it's not. So it's harder for us as Western people, I think, to sort of separate these organs in a Western medicine sense and the organs in a Chinese medicine sense. So I'm talking about the organs in a Chinese medicine sense. So that's why I'm going to talk about them in association with the elements, so we hopefully don't get too confused. So back to the liver. So the liver opens into the eyes. It manifests in the nails. It stores blood. And these are areas where we can look to see an association between, like, okay, maybe you just have that symptom, like you're like, oh, my nails are brittle, how do I fix that? Or what else does that mean in my body? So there's an association between the liver and blood and nails. So blood nourishes the nails. It nourishes those kind of parts of your body that are, like before you get to bone, you've got nails, right? That's the kind of type of tissue that it is. So in many cases, it can be a lack of what in Chinese medicine they call it blood deficiency, but it can be a lack of like moisture in the blood to moisten. So there's dryness, and often with blood deficiency patterns, we see a lot of dryness in those kinds of people. So it could be dry nails, it could be dry hair, it could be dry skin. They're all things to do with blood. What else does the liver do? It looks after the tendons and the sinews. Okay, that's the same thing. So you might see this in some books where they'll talk about sinews in one sentence and tendons in another. It's the same idea, the same thing. So when you have a muscle, the ends of that muscle, where it attaches to the bone, so that's essentially what muscles have to do. They have to attach from one bone to another, just basic of what they do. That little part of the muscle, that end part, belongs to the liver. That's where it sort of nourishes them. And that's often when people get musculoskeletal pain, right? They have aches or pains or cramps or yes, not all kinds of pain, but many types of pain can belong to sinews, not the muscle itself. So the muscle might be fine. The pain's actually caused because the tendons are drying and cramping the muscle, like causing the muscle to tighten, basically. So that's another way we treat musculoskeletal things, like pain, aches and pains, sometimes by nourishing liver blood. That's one of the ways that pain can be treated. So again, coming full circle, why do we want to bother to understand all this? Is so that we can actually do something about it. We can intervene and we can work out where we should intervene, and also to understand what do these little weird things mean. Like if you have floaters in your eyes, for instance, which are little specks that you see, that relates to liver. Chinese medicine relates to liver blood. Right, now the emotions of the liver and the wood. So we're just going to talk about this in the wood, for the wood in general. The main emotion is said to be frustration, resentment, anger. These are all different types of the same emotion, really. So is anger ever a good thing? Are these all just negative emotions? So the answer is there is a time and a place for anger, right? There's a time and a place for us to kind of be, stimulated enough to be angry, moved enough to do something about it. Though maybe if the anger kind of does that for you, that can be a good thing. So I'm just putting that element there. And like, let's say you don't have any of that. Almost a lack of that is the flatness that can be part of depression, right? Can be part of like there's just no get up and go at all. So in some ways, we could think of the emotion of anger, or all of these parts of this emotion, as a spectrum of, some kind of spectrum of emotion, rather than it just being, I feel angry, that's bad, I shouldn't feel angry. So it can be motivation, like the wood element relates to motivation. So that's certainly a good thing. Like, we need motivation. In Chinese medicine, one of the functions of the liver, qi, now so I've saved it to sort of talk about now, is it's said to spread the energy in all four directions. That's one of its functions. So I'm just drawing that there. And its energy moves. So every organ has an energy movement. With the liver energy, the wood energy, it's moving outwardly. If it's doing that properly, you will have a free flow. As in, something happens to you, you get a bit upset, and you think, that's okay, I'm not going to get really angry, I'm not going to get really emotional about it. That's okay. Now, I'm not saying being passive aggressive or letting people hurt you or anything like that, but I'm just saying it's like almost a temperance. You've got that ability to have that. Now, look, circumstances can happen to all of us, as in, I could have a very bad day. I could have lots of liver qi flowing. But if I had enough irritating things happen to me, those things in itself could cause that qi to become stuck and stagnant. So it's worth spending quite a bit of time on this because, one, it's so common, and secondly, there's so much we can actually do about this and help to prevent this. So one of the parts of the movement of liver qi is that if it's flowing smoothly, when stuff happens to us, whether it be physical stress, emotional stress, we have a more resilience to face those things, right? We have, especially emotional resilience. So if we don't have that, the example would be you're driving along in your car and something you do something accidentally to the person behind you. You don't smash into them or anything, but you suddenly stop, or I don't know, something happens, and you're in a traffic jam, and that person behind you just gets out of the car and they've got road rage, like they are angry and they're pounding on your bonnet, and you're like, well, this is like an unwarranted response to what has actually happened. And in many circumstances, those things are already, that person has had all this stuff building up inside them from, all the stuff they've had to deal with the day before, the weeks before, the months before, and they're not in the flow, as in they don't have any qi flowing, as in, well, they must have some because they're still alive, but they don't have enough of it. Otherwise they would, that thing wouldn't have just escalated that emotion so much. So proper, like, massive rage and anger is directly a result of stuck qi, right? Now, you kind of can think about this. Maybe you've got a person that irritates you and they just slowly chip away at you and make you angry and frustrated and things like that, until one day you just snap and you're like, I can't deal with this anymore, and you kind of, maybe that's your way of dealing with it so that they don't keep doing that thing. And sometimes that can actually be a helpful thing for us, right? So think about it when you're a kid and someone is bullying you and they keep doing it, and it's not until you retaliate, in terms of, not saying hit them or anything, but you say, hey, stop doing that, and there's a bit of anger there. There's a bit of assertiveness there, okay? So this is where I'm talking about the spectrum, and this is where all this sort of fits into this spectrum of assertiveness. So we could put assertiveness in the middle, and then you could put aggressive here and passive here. So almost like a little spectrum. So if you're assertive, you'll be, let's put a happy face there. Okay. If you're angry and you're aggressive, you're sort of, I don't know, that's a sort of a frowny face, or kind of angry. And if you're a passive person, you just kind of let things go all the time. You don't have any anger, but you just don't have any assertion. You don't even put your will forward. So you are kind of just, it's not great to have that. Like, there's such a lack of flow that there isn't even an ability to stand up for yourself, right? And to assert yourself in the world. So that's part of that. As we go forward in this course, like, there'll be time to kind of discover, well, that, you know, for instance, like, you know, if that's something that you're struggling with and you think, yeah, Marie, I wish I could be a bit more assertive. How would I get that? There are ways to leverage those 5 elements. And acupuncturists can do that with acupuncture, right? So they might use a theory called tonify the water to generate the wood. So this is like, if you're really passive and that's all the time, and there's like a lot of low motivation, you don't feel like you have much of a purpose and things like that. Often that's a lack of wood, because wood in itself will give you that assertion, right? So that's enough wood. Too much wood, or wood that's stuck, wood energy that's stuck, is that aggressive, and then that, you know, frustration. Another emotion that we haven't talked a lot about is sort of resentment. And it can kind of be like, that's almost a struggling to let go. And this kind of then moves into perhaps being part of like a bit more of a complex emotion, right? It can be could be a bit a part of metal, because that's relating to letting go. It could be a part of the earth element, because that's sort of ruminating on the past. So these things aren't just only one thing, but in general, that angry, frustrated, resentment, rigidity is a good word to put here, right? A person that's very rigid, fixed, not flexible. Those are things where the wood element lacks the flow. Now, how do we get that flow back? There's a lot of ways we can do that. So what does the wood element like? It loves movement, any kind of movement. So it loves exercise. So the wood element loves movement, okay? It loves to be actually physically moved. So that's any kind of exercise. Now, I'll leave that up to you to work out what's right for you. So if you are a person that hasn't exercised for a long time, probably start with walking in water. Those are the 2 of the easiest things, right? Maybe you're really, really overweight and it's a struggle for you to do even a bit. So you know when your limit is, but doing something is better than nothing. And something that's kind of, there's some movement there, but there's not too much. And this is actually very beneficial for the wood in terms of helping your sinews, is the things like yin yoga. So it doesn't have to be like a super aggressive kind of exercise, although those things are great for the wood element too. So, you know, going out and doing something where you're sweating and you're using a lot of energy, that can be good for the wood element. It likes that. So the other thing the wood likes is breathing. So taking a nice, big, deep breath. And one of the signs of chi stagnation, liver chi stagnation, is sighing. So how do we know if liver chi is stagnation? If liver chi is stuck, if you have liver chi stagnation, you'll have sighing. You'll have possibly shoulder and neck tightness. Now that's because that's where the gallbladder channel is. You can have headaches. You can have tight neck. Okay, they're all possible, not necessarily that you have to have those things, but sighing is a big one. Okay, you feel better when you do exercise, not more tired. Okay, if you feel more tired after exercise, then you're probably more deficient, or there's some aspect of deficiency that's kind of going on in the picture there. You'll probably get a thing called hypochondrial pain, right? Which is like tightness around under the ribs. And even if you just sort of press or rub there, that would in itself relieve that tightness. So that's So tightness in the hypochondrial area. So it's just the area below your ribs at the side of your body. So you can actually just sort of rub in that area, and you'll kind of it'll help you to, like what's happening to me now. I'm just feeling like as I've rubbed there, I just naturally took a big deep breath, and then that made me do that yawn. Now, yawning is also a symptom with that qi stagnation of you releasing that stuck qi. So when you're listening to people talk, yawning is not such a great example, because sometimes if someone yawns, another yawns, like they're one of those things that can catch on. But if you notice people sighing about certain topics, like you're talking to someone in a thing, and you're like, oh, how are you going? Like, oh yeah, I'm good. Like, how's your week been? Yeah, it's been fine. But I've just been so, and the thing they're going to say next is the thing that they're stuck about. The thing. So watch those sighs, right? For yourself, be aware of when you're sighing, what you're sighing about. Oh, my partner's just all, bothering me at the moment, or something's happened. We all have stuff that we get stuck about. We all have things that are bothering us from time to time. So there's nothing to be ashamed about. It's just to notice that will help you with the diagnosis of yourself, of other people. So the wood element likes movement, right? It also likes singing. Is another thing that it does. So it loves exercise, it loves singing, it loves laughing. So these things, the singing, the laughing, they all push that qi through the chest, and they help it to kind of move like that. Nice big kind of movement. So these are all things you can do. Now, the other things that help liver qi stagnation is also pungent foods. So these are things like, and I'll rattle off a big list in this. Now, if you do the course with me, you'll get handouts with this sort of stuff, and we'll, help you to give you time to sort of write this stuff down. There'll be workbooks and things like that. But because this is for YouTube, you're just going to have to write it down quickly or get into the course. So things like coriander, ginger, mint, garlic, lemongrass, basil, mint, cinnamon, ginger, all those kinds of pungent herbs. Now, these are all culinary herbs. Some of them are Chinese medicine, some of them are not. Some of them are just things you'll find, herbs and spices. Fennel is another one. So these things all have, in somewhat, a way of moving qi. Now, what's the best kind of food to have that does this? Well, curries, Thai food, Indian food, these kinds of cuisines use a lot of these sort of spices. So these things all have a role to play in moving qi, right? So they can all move, like help that qi to kind of move along. So these kinds of foods. Now, there are a whole bunch of other foods that can be used. If you do the course with me, we actually will have a whole 12 weeks just on foods, right? So the first 12 weeks is going to be talking about, stuff like this, theory, stuff like this. And then once you really understand that theory, then it's like, okay, how do pears work for this? How does citrus peels work for these kinds of things? So that's another food that you can use, citrus peels. So even lemon peel, tangerine peel, mandarin peel. One of those herbs, tangerine peel, is used as a herb in Chinese medicine called chen pea. It's a very, very commonly used herb. On one hand, it's used for dampness. On the other hand, it's used for qi stagnation. And it's basically just dried peel from a tangerine or a mandarin. And you dry that, and then you make a tea out of it, and you drink the tea. It's quite almost a bitter and a sweet kind of flavour. So it's not a yucky flavour to drink. It's quite a nice flavour. Anyway, so these are the kinds of things we can do. So the wood element loves movement. Okay, it likes exercise. And for some of us, like what happens is we're very busy in our life, and we just forget to do the regular exercise that would just have otherwise benefited us. And then we are left with the fallout of that, which is energy stuck and, building up. So it's good to do something every day in terms of movement. And if you have a job where you're stuck in a desk for the most of the day and you don't get to move around a lot, maybe there's some other ways you can incorporate movement into your day. You might take the stairs. You might, if you have an hour of lunch break, you might sort of eat your lunch in 15 minutes and then spend half an hour walking around the park before you go back to your day, to your desk in the day. Finding ways to kind of incorporate this, as well as doing like your 45 minutes or so of an actual dedicated amount of exercise, is a great idea to do. It's just to include that as part of your life. It doesn't have to be super expensive, and it doesn't have to be super long-winded, involved. Like, just go for a walk is one of the best things you can do in terms of exercise. So if we go back to sort of the first slide here, we've got the wood element relating to spring. It relates to wind, the eyes, the blood, tendons, nail. It relates to moving of qi. So that's the kind of thing we've just sort of talked a lot about that, moving qi. So it moves qi in all four directions. So the next thing we want to talk about with the wood element is blood, like tonifying its role in blood. What is the liver or the wood's element's role in blood? So where does blood come from? How do we make blood? Now this is, again, I'm just going to give another little, this is a tutorial type of a video, right? So this is a deep dive. This is going to take time. Now when I do these lessons, would have like 3 hours on this kind of a topic, right? I'm trying to condense this into a shorter video, shorter being longer than what I would normally do, probably even for a YouTube video. But I'm not going to be able to cover everything here, because to give it its due diligence, it would be actually probably what I'm doing now would be a bit slowed down and a bit more in depth in a 3-hour video. So what is blood in Chinese medicine? When we say blood deficiency, when we talk about blood, what do we even mean by that? It refers to the quality of blood that people have. I used to always get very confused when I was studying Chinese medicine. Teachers would say, oh, this person's got blood deficiency. I was like, what does that mean? Does it mean they don't have enough blood? Like, how could you not have enough blood unless you've gone and lost blood, like given blood at the blood donation clinic, or had a surgery, or physically lost blood? But these are patients that hadn't had any of that, and the practitioner's saying you've got blood deficiency. And I was like, that used to really confuse me. So what it means is it's referring to the quality of the blood. And it's almost like the Chinese medicine way of doing a blood test, right? So when you go to the doctor and you get some blood drawn and they check all the levels in your blood, they're assessing the quality of the blood. So before they had blood tests and things like that, like people back in the Han Dynasty, when this stuff was kind of, being matured and developed, like they didn't have the ability to do those tests, but they did still obviously understand that different components were, involved in the blood. And that was obviously making some people sick and some people more healthier than others. Now, how does Chinese medicine detect that? Okay, we can't say you've got low iron levels, or you've got, low vitamin D levels in your blood from your pulse diagnosis, or even from your symptoms. It's more that sometimes those symptoms that people have relate to blood deficiency in Chinese medicine, but they haven't put it together with the vitamin D part. Not in Chinese medicine. So essentially what we're doing when we're saying we're going to tonify blood is, if you go to an acupuncturist, they're not putting any substance in you that's blood related. So they're not giving you any components to make that blood out of. They're just simply attuning those organs or removing stagnation from around those organs that are involved in the blood making process to make that machine, your body's internal machine, work better. That's essentially the understanding of it. So how does the liver come into this, right? Because the liver's job in the whole blood making process is actually what they call to store blood. So the liver stores blood. And you'll see this in something like your Giovanni textbook, Liver Storing Blood. And that what they mean by that is when you're sleeping, it's filtering blood. So when you lie down, your blood returns more to your organs. You don't need as much blood in your arms and legs. So that's a signal for your body to start, especially when you fall asleep, to start doing its filtration literally in the liver. So we're talking now about the Western medicine liver. So this is like filtering out all the toxins in the blood. So that's part of sleep is, the filtration of blood happens more when you're sleeping. And that's what Chinese medicine means by, that's what they sort of are referring to that as, it's storing blood. So blood returns to the liver, it's kind of getting filtered, it's getting cleaned, and then, pumped back out into the rest of the circulation. So that's one aspect of like making blood. Now, the other way to tonify blood is through the diet, and that whole part belongs to the spleen and the earth element. So we'll just save that for when we talk about the earth element, or if you come in and do the course, we'll definitely be talking about it then. I really don't think I'm going to be making a lot of these videos for YouTube. I'm not going to do all of the elements. I'm just choosing one to kind of give you a sample so you kind of understand that. And you can make a decision, is this right for you, if this kind of level of understanding is what is this what you want to do? So, we'd be just meeting once a week over Zoom and doing these lessons, and then you'll get a recording. Some people won't be able to make the Zoom live because it's, different times all around the world. You can click the link below this video to find out more about the times and the things like that. I've done my best to do like a little time zone conversion for people to kind of work that out. And there is there'll be a replay option available for people. And, if you're watching this after the course has even started, you can always contact me to see whether you can jump in partway through, because you can catch up by the recordings and then jump into the live ones, ongoing as needed, basically. Anyway. So when we say the liver stores blood, we're really trying to optimize that filtration, that sleep. So sleep is the massive component here. And when I see patients for Chinese medicine, no matter what's wrong with them, I'm always concerned in some way about their sleep, because like I could give people blood tonic herbs or foods. We could bang away at that sort of stuff. But if your sleep isn't good, you are missing out, for one, on one of the components of being able to nourish your own blood, to make your own blood, of good quality. And then you're either going to maybe get healthier by taking the herbs, but you're like relying on that. And as soon as you stop that, things just maybe go back to how they were. So people that are watching this, obviously you want to help yourself. And so that's really reflects us back to the importance of sleep. So whatever you can do to have good sleep, you should do that thing. Sometimes it's not as easy as it sounds. Like, I know that some people try their very best to have the best sleep and they still can't. They have different circumstances that are affecting them. Now, what are those circumstances? You might have a kid that keeps waking up and it's nothing to do with you, but you've just, you're raising a child and they wake up all the time and you've got not great sleep. You just have to bear that as best as you can. Hopefully help your kid to have better sleep eventually, and then you'll have better sleep too. Or for some of my patients, and this is probably where you can intervene the most, is some people just don't value their sleep enough and they just don't get enough sleep. They have lazy habits. They don't go to bed early enough, or they don't allow themselves to sleep late enough. You need 7 hours at least of sleep. In Chinese medicine, we kind of think you need more sleep in winter and less in summer. So you can get away with a bit less sleep in summertime. In wintertime, it's like that catching up of sleep. Another type of disharmony that happens from sleep is constantly changing shift work, sometimes sleeping in the day, sometimes sleeping in the night, working days, working nights, the discombobulation that can happen with those things, not sound enough sleep. Again, some of these things you can't change. Like if you live in a very busy place and it's always noisy there, you have to maybe go and get some earplugs so that you can block out the noise, and that might be what you've got to do. So sleep is one of the biggest ones that it's one of the most important things, but it's also one of the biggest places we can intervene. It's something you can do something about to help make blood. So blood also in Chinese medicine in the liver relates to your menstrual cycle. So put a little wood circle there. So we can see the quality of blood that you have through your menstrual cycle. Now, this is assuming that you're a female and you've got a cycle, and secondly, that you're of an age to have the cycle. So if you've gone through menopause, maybe you could reflect on your own cycle in the past and see that. A proper menstrual cycle, a good quality cycle, should be 28 days or very close to that in terms of regularity. Not sometimes 21 and sometimes 37. That's a big irregular cycle. You never know. It's a surprise period. You never know when you're going to get it. Like that's not great in Chinese medicine. So it should be regular, looking for every 29 days, or it's sometimes 28 and sometimes 30 days. That's not too bad. That's pretty regular, right? Although Chinese medicine, some practitioners will say, it's got to be exactly 28 days, but really within 1 or 2 days of that is okay. So it shouldn't be there shouldn't be too much discomfort with the period, and pain certainly shouldn't be part of it. It is part of it for many people, but I'm talking about what's a perfect menstrual cycle in Chinese medicine. Not too heavy, not too light kind of thing, right? Roughly about 5 days of bleeding. The last few days, some people have 5 days of bleeding and then a few more days of sort of spotting or something like that. Or they have maybe a very heavy first couple of days and then a lighter couple of days. But the first couple of days that are heavy shouldn't be what we call flooding or, extremely heavy. So these are things that we might get into more detail in the course. But knowing whether your cycle is normal or regular in Chinese medicine is something you probably go to a practitioner for, right? As in, there's a lot of different things here, a lot of nuances to sort of go through. I actually do have a video on YouTube about a menstrual cycle. So there's probably people watching this that are like, I don't want to talk about menstrual cycles. So we'll just move on from that now. But that is one of the ways that we kind of see the health of blood for females. Now, the other way that blood reflects for males and females is in your skin. So your skin can kind of show us your blood through dryness is a sign of blood deficiency, right? And also what they call lackluster. So a person that's got a very, very pale skin, there's a lack of blood and a lack of luster. Like the luster is also part of the redness. If you're talking about a person with white skin like me, there should be it shouldn't be so deathly pale with no sort of red or like a shine kind of coming through, a glow, right? Now, it also shouldn't be too red either. Now, in Chinese textbooks, they obviously Chinese people, which the majority of Chinese medicine was developed on Chinese people, talking about in the Han Dynasty. So, some of these diagnostic things are more difficult on people with darker skin. Certainly the dryness isn't. Like you can definitely notice whether your skin's dry or not dry, but whether it's pale or not, you have to kind of either know what your skin normally is like, and then to notice, it's not that you might not notice that your skin gets too pale, but you might notice that your skin lacks luster, right? It just looks duller than it should look. And that would be no matter the original skin tone. It would look sort of more, it lacks luster, right? And it's kind of a bit of an old word, but it is a common word in Chinese medicine books. So that can also be part of blood deficiency, like lackluster skin. So there's a natural glow that happens. And if you want that natural glow in your skin, which a lot of people do, that comes from blood, like that comes from healthy blood, to sort of generate that. And part of it is generating the moisture that your body needs. Not all types of skin dryness is due to blood deficiency, by the way. There can be other reasons for it, but one of the most common associations is blood deficiency. So this is why it is quite complex becoming a Chinese medicine practitioner, because it's not always the one answer. Like, so there are other mechanisms that moisten the skin, like your fluids moisten the skin through sweating, through your pores. So that's another avenue. If I had a patient that came in and said, "Oh, Marie, I've got dry skin, please help me," I'd have to investigate the blood side of things. How is their blood? That's my mind's thinking that. Then my mind's thinking, if there's nothing wrong there, they don't seem to have any blood deficiency symptoms. Well, how is their ability to sweat and produce fluids? And can they moisten their skin through that mechanism? Is that mechanism working properly? So just to sort of give that caveat for some people that are thinking, hang on a minute, I've got dry skin and there's nothing wrong with I don't think I have blood deficiency. So another thing which I failed to mention, that's go back a little bit of a step with the cycle, the complete lack of a cycle. So let's say amenorrhea would be blood deficiency. Okay, so no cycle or no period. This is called, that's the Western medicine term for it. That generally is a case of blood deficiency, because there's just a lack of an ability to produce the blood to generate the cycle. Now, because we're talking about the wood element here, there's two really interesting components that it can be. When you don't have a cycle, it can be blood deficiency, and that's a harder or a longer term one to treat, like to help someone generate enough blood to get the cycle going. But it can also be going back to this qi stagnation, right? This liver qi stagnation, that can also cause a lack of ability to get the cycle flowing, like as in, there's just a lack of movement. When I've treated patients with acupuncture for this, generally if they do one treatment with acupuncture and the cycle just returns, it's most likely a case of qi stagnation, because acupuncture isn't strong enough in one treatment to sort of generate blood, right? Especially if a person is definitely blood deficient, it takes time for them to make a surplus of blood in order to make the cycle. So you think of your menstrual cycle as like a surplus of blood. So if there isn't a surplus, the body's conserving what it's got, it's not going to make the cycle, and the cycle might stop, right? And in biology, they think of that as a protective mechanism, right? Like if you we're in a state of like starvation, like not enough nutrition for your body. This happens in people in famine times, war times, stuff like that. Or you're in a state of extreme distress, mental distress, like trauma or something like that. Your body's protective mechanism is like, the last thing for me that would be good for me right now would be to get pregnant. So we just hold up, stop that whole factory down there, so that can't happen. It's kind of can be a little bit like that, right? So in order to generate blood, we need substance to generate that blood out of, and we'll talk about that when we talk about the earth element, the digestion, what foods to eat that can generate that. But we also need those organs working properly, which in this case is the sleep mechanism of the liver, in order to help facilitate making that healthy blood. So this is where we think about sleep linked to blood deficiency. So if you want your skin to be good, because this is another thing, so you want your menstrual cycle to be good, or you want your skin to be good, those things there's a direct relationship between sleep and those things through blood in Chinese medicine. So these are the main aspects of what the wood element does in Chinese medicine. So we've talked about relating to the springtime, we've talked about the cycles of the menstrual cycle, but also the other aspects of this movement, this qi moving. And the rhythmical nature is that the wood element is kind of in charge of those circadian rhythms of your body. It's in charge of of the movement of the cycles, almost all of the cycles in your body. This kind of thing. It's one of the ways we can intervene if those things are out of balance. So another aspect of the wood element is in like your purpose and like your direction in life. And this is through one of its spiritual resources. So then another thing that the wood does is it houses every element or organ houses a spiritual resource. So it houses the hun, or the ethereal soul. And this kind of gives us a little way, little doorway to talk about the more emotional, mental kind of symptoms and aspects. And some of these aren't symptoms; they're just things of how Chinese medicine sees these things. The hun is the part of the soul. That's why they call it the ethereal soul, because it's the least tangible of the soul. So this is kind of relates to our dreams. Now, two parts of dreams, right? One is the dreams you dream when you're sleeping, like, I had a weird dream last night, pizza dream, or whatever your dream's about. And then you also have dreams and visions and hopes for your future. That is a wood-related thing. So being able to see a future for yourself and a future for your life is a wood element aspect. Being able to make plans for your life. Life planning is a wood element aspect. Now, I've talked a lot on this channel about the personality types in Chinese medicine. And there actually are videos that go into those things. So this is a good transition to kind of almost finish this tutorial now. And if you want to learn more about that part of the wood element, I'll link that video here. So you can kind of just jump into that and think about the personality aspects, the mental sort of, let's say, even spiritual aspects of the wood element. Now, how do we see that is actually through the connection to the ethereal soul. So that's why I said in this video, it's kind of the next layer down. This is the deeper thing. So if I was teaching students in a like, let's say, first year Chinese medicine school kind of level, we would be asking, well, why does Chinese medicine link life planning with the wood element? It's not just, there's no reason there. It's through the ethereal soul. It's through that connection. So that's kind of like links us to a sense of purpose. And that's a common thing that people come to Chinese medicine for, actually. They feel a sense of, like, they're like, my motivation and my drive isn't there. And yeah, I just don't feel like my mojo. I feel like my mojo is gone. A big aspect of this is creativity, right? Like your spark, your creative zest, your spark to do things. And one of the ways you can stimulate this, and it's easier said than done, is actually to do creative things. Now, if you've got no joy and no spark there, look, maybe that's not the place for you to start. But if there's a little bit of that there and you want to stimulate that, do something new that you've never done before that's creative. Like, you've never done pottery, go and do a one-off pottery class, right? I'm not saying go and become a potter and you have to go and make a lot of those things. Or, explore some aspect of go and do a creative cooking class, or even just watch a few YouTube videos and make a different recipe that you've never made before. Like, there's a lot of ways to be creative in something new. And when you're doing something new, there's almost this thing of well, it doesn't matter if I stuff up. It doesn't matter if I make a mistake. I don't have to be perfect. I've never done this before. And that's a very powerful part of exploring that creativity. And that in itself stimulates the wood. It stimulates that drive and that purpose. And, sometimes it's not till we're actually doing the thing that we realize, oh, I actually like doing this. Oh, maybe I could make a career out of this. Maybe I want to do this. Maybe I really enjoy doing this. Shit, I would like to do more of that thing. And that's why I wanted to actually make this video, because I'm starting this course in a couple of weeks, actually, from now, from recording this. Hopefully I'll edit this ASAP. And I really wanted to just demonstrate to you what the type of thing we'll be doing in the course. Now, it's actually going to be even a bit more structured than this. I've not come to this actually today with any notes, other than a few little things I quickly jotted down beforehand. I just want you to understand what my teaching style is kind of like. I will kind of just have a topic and sort of talk about it. But in the course, there's a structure there, right? And you'll get some notes, you'll get some handouts and stuff like that. But it's more of an opportunity for you to kind of explore those topics in a bit more of an in-depth and certainly a building way, right? When you watch videos on YouTube, it's like, oh, I enjoyed that topic, that's over here. I enjoyed that's over here. And yeah, that information will piece together in some way, like a puzzle. But this will be like, okay, you learned this last week. Now this builds on that. Now this builds on that, right? And it's kind of a little bit like that. So hopefully you've enjoyed this. And if you have, and you want to learn a bit more, click the link below to find out about the course. And I really would love to have you as part of it. I want it to be interactive. There's you can see in the thing there's another video. If you like watching videos, there's another video for you to watch about me explaining what is in the course and all that stuff. It's also written out in that webpage. There's so much in there. And I would love to help you on your journey to learn a little bit more. And hope you have a great week. And thank you so much for your attention watching. And I'll see you again on another video soon.